Come into the front. I can't do the back. Yeah.
Well, actually, you know what? Let me pause this. I'll go. Yeah, we should go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our first official review committee. Yeah, I know. It's telling us all. So, well, I guess on the agenda, the first thing I have it would probably make sense to do. I mean, so, we want to bring people, their town.
Guess what about this? Run the but
ZBA.
The line on Coelho Conservation. Right, Salisbury Planning Board.
Excellent. So I think what should happen is there should be a chair and a vice chair. There doesn't need to be a secretary or clerk because I'm going to be taking the minutes for this. Hence why I'm recording this because it will be. Yeah. So with that, I don't know if anybody's interested in being the chair and the vice chair.
I'm choose a chair. You want to do it? No.
I can't share another chair.
Situation at home, I can't be.
Oh, okay.
So. Well, I'm kind of in the same. You know, I expected that.
You hold off on so we have the full board. It's up to you guys.
We should at least see if he's interested.
Yes, yeah.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, that works with me, so we can hold off on that.
The chair for the charter, wasn't he? Yep.
Yep. Yeah. So that makes sense. And really tonight, the whole point is to have a very brief presentation, just go over kind of the crux of our zoning bylaws, just to kind of explain to you what we've got going on, some of the issues. Tim Icardi, the building inspector and zoning enforcement officer, you know, is going to be joining us for meetings. He's on vacation this week, so he wasn't here tonight, but there's a couple items there that I think Tim will be able to actually add on to. There's one piece of legislation that's coming out soon, in particular, accessory dwelling units that I don't know if everyone's aware of, but that's something that's going to require some changes to our zoning bylaws sooner rather than later. But you know, I know quite a bit about it. Tim knows even more, but I have it on the slide deck, and I can share these with everybody too after this meeting. So what I can do is I can go over the PowerPoint presentation and then kind of open it up for discussion. What I envision for this committee is that if we were to tackle all the zoning bylaws at once, I think we would run into a pretty significant issue because number one, it's a lot of work. And I think, you know, taking pieces at a time is the best way, especially with presenting at town meeting, because we need to vote to amend the zoning bylaws. So what I would recommend is perhaps as a committee, we try and figure out the maybe 2, 3, maybe even 4 items per town meeting that we tackle. And you know, it's going to take a while, might take a couple of years or so, might take longer than that. But if people are interested and we want to keep moving forward, I think that's the best way to do it. Is if we come in with a fully redesigned zoning bylaw, I think the public is going to be very concerned with what they're being presented because it's a lot of information. So after the presentation, I mean, I'm happy to discuss if there's any items too that you feel that we should be looking at. And then we should also discuss kind of the next time to meet, frequency of meetings. I envisioned once a month at the most. That way I can get information drafted, give it to you guys to review. We can see if there's any you want tweets and, you know, just we need some time to react to these things.
Sure.
Yeah, so with that, I can start a little presentation to just go over stuff that related to our zoning bylaws. I also have the zoning map here that I dragged down. Without further ado, so in Bellingham, we have 7 zoning districts. We have 2 residential, suburban, 2 businesses, an industrial and agricultural. There's also this multifamily dwelling district, which I don't know where it came from. It's a little bit confusing because it's only in 2 areas. That's shown in purple on the zoning map, which is this area, which I believe is Oakwoods, and this parcel, which I don't even know what this is, to be completely honest with you. I think there's houses on it, but that one's kind of an outlier. But essentially, the suburban and residential zone, 1-acre zone for residential, and then agricultural is larger 2-acre lots. The business 1 and business 2 zones are kind of interesting. I always assumed when I was on the planning board that it was difference in uses for those 2 districts. It's not. It's actually their intensity regulations, which they're really not different at all. This is another one that I don't understand why the B1 and B2 were ever created. It makes sense to have one business district, but I have that table up on the slides, and that's the section 240-40 in your binders. I'll get to that. So we have 7 zoning districts in total. And then we have quite a few overlay districts. We have, I think there's 7 together. Oh, there's 8. So I'm going to go through the water resource, mill reuse, Hartford Ave, adaptive use overlay, Weathersfield 55 plus, and downtown residential overlays. MBTA 3A, I think we've all heard about enough. That one just passed. Excellent. The energy resource overlay, I'm not going to go over tonight, but that one is pushed to the spring 2025 meeting. I would rather this committee not really get too involved with that one unless you truly want to. I'll gladly give some information for that, but that one's a work in progress for later down the road. So with that, now one thing to note too in these slides, all of these maps that I'm showing, these are from our zoning bylaws, which you'll notice that they all look completely different. And one thing that we're all working on, we have a GIS guy that's actually creating maps that all look the same. So like, for example, this water resource district map is actually outdated. This is not the current one, but it's on our state. So that needs to be updated. But what this overlay is, it's where our zone 2 aquifer protection areas are. And that is essentially the areas that are protecting our aquifer. So there's basically use regulations and also requirements for if you want to store any hazardous material on site that's within that district, there's more regulatory requirements through the building department that you have to go through. But there's a lot of uses that are actually prohibited in this area, which include gas stations, vehicle repair facilities, any outdoor like salt sheds and such. Just like a DPW building wouldn't be allowed in the zone 2 aquifer protection district. That's one of the ways. This other one, this is the Weathersfield overlay. This was actually where the former Macy School property was, and this allowed for more denser housing. If they utilize regular zoning, I believe that area requires 1 acre lots, which if you look at Weathersfield, those are like quarter-acre lots. So this allowed for denser single-family housing, but also protected the playground and just the passive recreation areas. That overlay has been utilized. There was a developer, I think it was Oyster, that ended up developing that. So this overlay isn't even really relevant anymore. I mean, it is somebody who wants to, demo a house and build, but essentially that overlay has been utilized. The mill reuse overlay regarding the old mill that was demolished on Pearl Street. This overlay is also it's outdated because it was basically to reuse the existing mill for housing, and I think there was a nursing facility that be allowed in there, or
We were hoping it would develop for 40B
yeah,
many years ago.
there's inclusionary housing requirements that are associated with that one too. So, however, the mill has since been demolished, so that overlay should probably be revised because there's no mill to reuse. So, and here are three other ones. We have the Hartford Ave adaptive use overlay. That's across the street from Home Depot on Hartford Ave. That is the spot of lots. This ended up coming about. You had, I think it was in 2022, there was a proposed zone change associated with the three new properties in, and they want to, instead of utilizing the overlay, rezone that residential zoning to commercial. That did not fly. And there was actually a subcommittee, myself and Liz were on it, and we ended up coming up with what I thought was a pretty good overlay to allow more business uses, but not allow like food establishments that would generate a high volume of traffic, and also protect the residential neighborhood located behind those lots. The downtown residential development overlay is another overlay that's being utilized by, it's actually Windsor, that one's Red Mill on the Charles, which is currently in construction. That allows slightly higher density single family houses and townhouse dwellings.
They're constructing.
Well, they're still taking the material out, but it is.
Oh, you were?
They are. Oh yeah. Yeah. No, they're going ahead with it. So.
I didn't know that.
It actually worked out because if you recall, there was some concern with the trucks we were coming out. They were projecting a really aggressive amount of trucks leaving the state within like a 4-month period. It actually dragged out. That's why they came in front of, I think it's in front of the planning board for an extension. It might have been ZBA. Yeah. So, because it took longer for them to remove the material, which was nice. It wasn't as many, well, it was as many trucks, but not in such a short period of time. Exactly. So this overlay is being utilized currently. And then the 55 plus adaptive adult overlay is actually in the area around New England. It also allows higher density zoning. And it basically protects the golf course. So, but
That was for that bond being kept.
yes, so Bond B is no longer in the picture. There's actually a preliminary subdivision plan that will be in front of us December 12th. Doesn't really go into any of the development itself. There's also the ANRAD from Conservation Division. So there's still not a whole lot of information on exactly is going to be done. I know we've had a lot of conceptual discussions about access. So we'll be discussing that.
Look around and all.
Correct. So that's a big one. Those are three. So the Hartford Ave one is the only one that hasn't really been utilized yet, but with the improvements that are gonna be happening on Hartford Ave, we anticipate that there probably will be applications sooner rather than later for that one. I'm personally excited for it because a lot of people are asking what's gonna happen with those three houses, and I would love to tell somebody that they're being demolished and there's something that's gonna go in that utilizes that flag. Um, so I think that's all the overlays.
Property around the country club,
Yes,
why does the golf course need protecting?
so this is kind of speculation probably around from when the zone change occurred. My understanding was that there was developers like golf courses that were interested in putting quite a bit of, oh, because that's 350 acres, I
Sure.
think, it's huge. So the town thought it would be best to create a zoning overlay that would allow denser housing at the cost of protecting the golf course, so we didn't lose another one.
Okay,
I think that was the logic behind it. I don't know, do you recall conversations? It was
kind of like,
2017 when it,
yeah, you figure, but it was like the, the music band. This guy sweeps into the office and has all the solutions to this bond. They have to gonna come in and use the golf course and build a 55 plus community with all these different amenities and sold to everyone like this is great, blah blah blah. And that's the like he had these presentations and all this. That's overlay went in and everyone was like, oh, when they gonna do it?
well, I'm just curious, say protection for the golf course, is it the golf course asking for the protection, or are we trying to, like,
It's really protection for the golf course. It was to permit to permit them to be able to develop and 50 plus.
I see. Yeah, yeah.
Well, school,
Yeah, yeah,
school,
yeah, that was, I think protect is, there's, I think a clause in there, you have to keep half of the 350 acres as passive recreation, including but not limited to golf course. So golf course in this case. So, but yeah, I don't think Bonneville is involved anymore. Now it's Bonneville is the developer that we've been talking to, or that is submitting applications.
So there won't be golfing anymore? There won't be a course?
No, they won't be. Yeah, they own the golf course and they. Yeah, I think, if anyone is familiar with Payne Street, there's some pretty significant access hurdles that need to be addressed, and part of that, I believe, is to address the horrendous entrance to New England Country Club that is completely blind, like you cannot see when people are ripping down Payne Street. So access will have to be integrated with the site altogether. So yes, it will be part of the community.
You still have to put in the file somewhere, but material fund presented, grant plan.
I didn't know, so I was actually looking for his concept, It'd be on the server, but like I did try and find them because I was trying to find anything that was from what I was trying to figure out why this thing was passed is basically what it comes down to. And a little bit more,
Yeah.
maybe regulations themselves, but pretty straightforward. If you read that overlay, it's pretty much pretty significant amount of density allowed, protect open space. Oh, and really put the onus on the owner to talk with public safety to make sure that access is going to be good, and then it goes through the special permit process. So through the planning board.
I wonder if at the moment that they were, I know for a while we were scrambling for any sort of way to be compliant with 40B. And so this was sort of like, wow, this seems like a good idea. So maybe they were a little more open to it at that point.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any inclusionary consequences with it, which is it, if it's 55 plus, it's tricky to consider it as part of
That was,
inclusionary
that one
housing.
from the grant, thanks for the grant part, there was no portable unit component. So,
Yeah, I don't know why, but I don't know why that would be considered.
I was old enough to be.
Yeah, I wasn't around.
You make that joke.
Um, so those are the overlays, but in your packets, this is the use table, which it's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's broken up between agricultural, commercial, industrial, and residential. Oh, and institutional uses, which you'll see in there. So the B1 and B2 zones, they have the exact same uses. And the suburban residential district also have the same uses. And they are both 1 acre zoning, so it's interesting that those features were created. It really comes down to the intensity of use regulations that differ from those. But I included this because there's also some footnotes that are interesting too, associated with some of these uses. There's some setback requirements. There's something in here, I believe it is. There's an item in here about anything regarding a drive-through use requires a special permit through the planning board. However, we have no drive-through regulations in our zoning bylaws that I can get to. There's some good stuff in your patents for that. So there's some interesting stuff in there that I think could use some updating. There was also, this is something that's a little bit more, I don't want to see involved under the weeds, but the Board of Health was also trying to change some of their livestock regulations and incorporating that into our zoning bylaws because it's kind of loose. I believe what the issue is that I think there's a clause in their regulations that essentially do not have an age restriction on livestock, and the whole intent of that is that I think people can breed certain things, but they have to obviously get rid of them after a certain amount of time. I'll let the Board of Health explain it, but there's something that they want to incorporate into the zoning bylaws that matter of fact, there was a warrant article that came from the planning board, if you recall that. It was like a year ago, I think, and it died, but they didn't move forward with it. But that's another item too, maybe,
Just as an aside on that point, I don't know what it was, but there was a many about chickens many years ago.
it's funny because as I go into the health department office with Dylan, I've had some very in-depth conversations regarding chickens and rats. Those two things, if you bring them up in the health department, man, go ahead and
Ordering lunch.
yeah, you're gonna be talking for hours. There's a lot of stuff going on.
I know of rats.
Neither do I, but trust me, I learned. So that's the use regulations. The other item too is the intensity of use regulations. Those are really, I'm taking the two that are really the backbone for card going as the actual themselves. But we should really the most with zoning uses and just how much you can develop. So like the intensity of use schedule, it has front setbacks, side setbacks, rear setbacks, building height, lot size, and you can see like the B1 and B2 districts, they have the same, pretty much are the exact same, except one of them requires a 10-foot setback, the other one a 50-foot. And then one has 20 feet of frontage, the other one has 20 feet of a. So it's like a difference between 5 feet side yard, 10 to the front yard, which is interesting. Big.
What's on the north side, and two's on the south side?
So that's the interesting part too, because most of our business district is B1. B2 scattered, so this is the B2, which you can see, Mendon Street, the main drive on Mechanic. Like that's correct, that's business one. Pulaski Boulevard as well as South Main Street. This is like where Vets Liquors and the Trump store and all that stuff is. And then there's a spot, that's the Coachman's Lodge, which is. Then there's a few other, this is where Cumberland Farms is, there's a couple businesses going towards Bellingham on Hartford. And then some more on the Franklin side. This is the intersection of Mechanic Street and Maple Street. So where the business two districts are is where things get a bit funky because there's business two district here. This is on going toward Hopedale, which I think there's a junkyard there.
Junkyard?
Yeah, I think that's the junkyard, and I think that's where those Wozniak's office was. There's down here, which is Vaughn's. It's where the drive-in was.
Yeah.
Used to be ice cream, yeah.
Yeah, so that one is business too. And that also has been turned into a 40B. That's where Taft and Ernie and Taft Drive are. Lovely 40B. Yeah. And then there's also this one on Green Street, which this is interesting because this side's all houses. This side, this is where Bellingham Lumber is, and the rest is all residential. And then there's like Lake Street Auto here. So this business two district is very, very strange, especially because like up here, this is where Depot is, which is an industrial business too. I don't know why, because usually that would just encompass a certain amount of lots. This one was just kind of here. I don't really know why, if there's any rhyme or reason to the business too. There's also lots over here, which that
Yeah, this, you pointing this out and not knowing, only being able to guess at why these things were done. How more important that we make sure that we take the notes and explain ourselves, so being answering them, so what are these things?
you're absolutely right. I agree completely. So, and then once again, the multi-use district, I think that they created this for Oakwoods. And then there might have been a project that was proposed in this lot at one point, but fell through.
Where's that? That one?
This one or this
That
one? This one is, so this is the Hartford Ave and North. This is 126 and 120. So I think, I don't know what this is, to be honest. It's just open. Which,
Is
there
the
might be,
land, didn't that guy who came to the MBTA meeting, isn't that where he owns?
that.
Oh,
That's this one. Which there's a lot of wetlands in here. It shows here, but there's more in here. Yeah. It used to be Lakeview Farm, it's now Outdoor Person, that's all this too. Right. So, anyway. Yeah, so that's the difference. I mean, it's odd. If I had to guess, because there's a slight difference between the front yard and side yard, I would assume somebody probably two district or probably the B1 because it's smaller, to make sure that when they encompass lots, existing non-conforming structures. Perhaps, but I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, that's the intent. And then there's other sections in this, there's the environmental control, which have noise, light, air, and, that is, there's a bunch of things. It's also stormwater regulations. However, the stormwater regulations pivot back to the, planning board procedural rules and regs that we just updated to meet our MS4 requirements. So the environmental controls are actually in pretty good shape, in my opinion. There's always room to add and address things, but the parking and loading requirements, those could probably be looked at. That's for, obviously required spaces for a specific use. I know some towns are very different when it comes to the parking requirements. Bellingham, since we're suburban and most people are driving, there's not a lot of pedestrian access or public transportation. So it probably makes sense to be a little bit on the heavier side when it comes to the parking requirements, which I believe we are. I don't think we have anywhere that has no parking except areas maybe like on Pulaski Boulevard, which I will be addressing too in this slide deck. But with that, it'd be good too to take a look at loading requirements, because I think we are kind of, we're a little bit light when it comes to loading spaces for commercial uses. And one thing to note with that, we haven't had a lot of commercial uses come in front of the planning board since I've been on it, but if there was a commercial use that came about, it would be important to make sure that there aren't any loading docks or loading spaces that would require a truck to back out onto a right of way. We're pretty much on top of it. I know, like myself and the fire chief and the public safety officer do a lot of reviews prior to any applications coming in, but we might not be here forever, so who knows? Not saying that I intend to leave, but you never know. It's one bad project to be interested. So. Landscape requirements are pretty self-explanatory. I think that we could add on to that as well. Accessory uses, the very important part of that is regarding we require a special permit for a family apartment, and that is the only allowed accessory use that we allow in our zoning bylaws. I have a slide just regarding the legislation that's passing. I'll get into that later, but that's going to be required we need to fix that sooner rather than later. And then inclusionary housing, there's certain areas that require the 10% affordable, which goes towards our SHI, which is subsidized housing index. Once you get above 10%, you're considered in safe harbor and you're not required to approve 40B projects. You can still have friendly 40Bs, but it's, the town has the right to say, no, we're not allowing this. Once you get above 10%, we're at 11.3%. So.
With the Curtis.
With the Curtis is helping our numbers out a lot, actually. They're the ones that really kicked us off. So, so going now into the fun part of the areas of concern. Town center, a lot of people have come to the office and have mentioned, and even in the planning board meetings, and I'm sure it's been in other, probably ZBA as well. People have noted that the town center, like we have a beautiful town common, we have our municipal campus here. Besides that, kind of lacks any aesthetic appeal. There's some really good businesses, but they're not really pedestrian friendly. It lacks character. There could be a better variety of uses. Now, typically with something like this, you have really no development. It's really up to law. However, I work in Shrewsbury that had a phenomenal town center district that they adapted, and goes into the architectural buildings, and it promotes pedestrian-friendly development, so pulling the buildings up to the street, parking in the back, and then also an emphasis on like a multi-use development. So like commercial retail piece on the first floor, and then a second floor would be either residential apartments with it wasn't a very aggressive density requirement, but it was enough to allow a developer to actually, entice them to actually utilize the zoning. And then there was also options if you want to do offices or something. And that also had a lot of landscaping requirements, hardscape requirements. It's very nice. I will definitely share it with people in the future, because it's something that I think we could build off of for this. So that's one item. The other item too is the Pulaski Boulevard area, it's the same thing. I mean, in that case, it is, a lot of people do, it is a very pedestrian utilized area, but the design of the buildings and the design of parking it's actually pretty bad. I mean, there's parking, or there's stores that have parking spaces that back up directly onto Pulaski Boulevard, which is a huge no-no, but it's obviously an outdated area, which is why if there's a way to maybe create some zoning for multi-use similar to the town center, that would look like facing to a developer and really utilize, some elements that would allow buildings in front, parking in back. I think that's the answer.
What is the history of Pulaski? Did that density just happen organically, or was that a previous plan at one point?
So my understanding is that if you look at the history of Bellingham, the northern part of Bellingham stayed pretty agricultural and rural. The southern side became a suburb of Woonsocket, and as a result, Pulaski was sort of developed as a extension of the commercial arm of Social Street in Woonsocket, which followed into Bellingham. Now, I don't know exactly what occurred because some of those buildings aren't really that old. I mean, if you had like, for example, Rocky's Ace Hardware, which I think is now True Value, which that's a weird one where it's set really far back with all this parking. And then you also have like Mary and So in back, which that building's been there a while, all parking in the front. I don't really know what happened between there though, because like Denny's Liquors is newer. By newer, I think that was built probably like in the 70s or 80s.
It was there in the 70s.
Yeah. So I don't really know if there was any rhyme or reason to the development. I think what may have occurred was Pulaski Boulevard was built at a time when architectural elements weren't exactly, a key aspect of the design. And there wasn't really zoning in place as well, which is like in the 50s, 60s, and 70s for commercial development.
And some of the structures still seem as if they're converting residential buildings.
Correct.
And over time, they either burned or were replaced by a few cheap commercial ones along the way.
Correct.
I think there was an effort at some point, maybe when I was on the zoning board, to do an overlay.
There was, I found it. I think it was from 2014 or 2013, maybe.
That might have been.
It's
But it ended up just not, a lot of those businesses there are, pre-existing non-conforming, so they wouldn't be able to, if they had a change of use, they basically, in order to do what they overly intended, with the combined properties.
agreed.
And so there wasn't enough incentive there. There was not enough carrot there, basically, for people to take
Yeah.
advantage of.
And I think that there's a way to make it work. Because like that was a prime example too of a few years ago. Where is it? So this is all industrial on Main Street. That was going to be, or was proposed to take that as suburban thing. Yes, suburban. And it ran into the same issue because Camp Bow Wow, there's another building that's there,
CrossFit, and
CrossFit,
ballet. And
yes.
computer play.
Exactly, and then there's all these media things, which really is making it seem use. Understood that ended up failing. Um, but you know, there's ways to do that. You know, you change that because the whole intent was to not allow warehouses in our area and also some massive front cars that are industrial over here. The intent was to try to make sure that correct.
Oh.
It was. That was horrible. So that was the reason behind it. And unfortunately, 306 Wall Street coming through, which is now approved warehouse because it's an industrial use. Anyway, so I do make a good point about, you know, to make sure that if you're going to rezone a district that has a lot of businesses,
Right.
you don't want to strong arm the businesses that are like Bellingham Electric, for example, is kind of a staple. Now, you don't want to do that to any of the businesses. They are the Pool Pro and Bellingham Electric, Marion Stoneback, Denny's. Those are all businesses that have been around for a while, and I'm sure they would not take too kindly to becoming non-conforming uses. So,
And you know, some of those things, the desires for that area were at odds with each other. And if you're trying to make a more pedestrian area, you don't want to, you know, you want to put traffic calming in place. You want to give, you know, give people a chance to cross the street. And then if you traffic, you want to fix, you know, people coming to the area.
yeah, speed
Going
tables,
through the area.
lots and lots of speed tables. I learned if you recommend speed tables or speed humps, the DPW does not take kindly to. So, rightfully
No
so.
one does.
Yeah, nobody thinks so. So,
No one likes 50-mile-an-hour driving on a 25-mile-an-hour road.
exactly. So that's one of the areas. So Town Center, Pulaski Boulevard. And then these are just some other ones. So the new state regulations that are allowing ADUs by right, essentially. So now we have to get rid of the whole clause for you need a special permit to get a family apartment. That goes away. You don't need any permit to do any type of accessory dwelling unit. There are requirements as far as meeting the zoning setbacks. But basically, with the new regulations, you can do an accessory dwelling unit by right, one of them. There is a square foot requirement. I think it's maximum 900 square feet or half of the square footage of the principal dwelling, whichever is smaller. So if you have like a 2,000 square foot house, you can do 900 square feet for the apartment because 1,000 square feet is more than 900.
So it has to be a dwelling.
Yeah, so you can either do an addition onto the principal structure, you can retrofit, like if you want to do a finished basement, or you can do a detached
Yeah.
unit. So you could do like a tiny house or something. We are allowed to require off-street parking. They do have to meet the Title V regulations, which these are all listed in our current special permit for a family dwell or a family apartment. So there just needs to be some slight tweaks to it to basically make it in compliance with the state regulations.
Are they required to register it still? Just so when the fire department gets a call, they know where to go.
I mean, they're gonna have to follow the building code, so I imagine that that's part of it, because I know. I just met with Tim to go over a family apartment that's gonna be in front of the ZBA in December. And he was going over, like, there are specific requirements related to fire safety, like where the smoke detectors are, carbon monoxide detectors. He knows all that stuff, but I assume that yes, they will have to register.
Yeah, like having an A and a B.
Yeah.
A street, A and B.
Yeah, I will be completely honest with you when it comes to this regulation. There's a lot of frustration from communities because this is similar to the MBTA where, it's a zoning mandate that basically it was, there's there's nothing you can do, there's no waiver, there's no exemptions, you have to do this. Unlike MBTA, we do not have to pass a zoning to be in compliance. The stipulation for the state now is that once this is enacted, which is February 2nd of next year, if you have zoning that contradicts the state regulations, it's just void, null and void, like it doesn't matter. So that's why a lot of towns are trying to meet the regulations. However, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities is the one that's also giving basically guidance to the state. They have not actually issued their guidance document yet, which this is enacted in February. And mind you, most towns have the town meeting in the spring, which is after February 2nd, to enact zoning to meet the requirements. So I'm just, needless to say, there's a lot of very unhappy municipalities. I know we've been very frustrated, myself and Tim, to try and figure out how we're going to tackle this, and it's gonna have to be a spring tech meeting situation. But with that, we're keeping our eyes on the regulations to see when the guidance documents are coming out, hopefully soon. I'm hoping next month.
So I think that particular one,
Critical.
like, first, I can probably get to this point, but first on our dockets, that thing.
I agree. I think,
Because there's no family element, right? It's just.
yep, there's no.
It's just everyone now has the right to do multi-housing family.
The other very, very odd thing to note. So with a family apartment, there is the requirement, obviously, that the occupant is a family member, and the principal unit has to be owner occupied. With this, you can have an accessory dwelling unit, and there is no requirement that it's family, it can be anybody. The principal dwelling unit also does not have to be owner occupied.
It's a multi-family home.
Exactly what it is.
And
So,
That's investment
yep,
Does this
opportunities.
regulation, stipulate anything about short-term rentals?
no, there's nothing in there about short-term rentals, and that's actually something that's been discussed from our regional planning side of things, because.
Cause then it's just, now we'll Airbnb it,
Yeah,
not
and
even just long-term rental, we'll just,
so
I don't know who, well, when FIFA comes,
we can
rent
talk
out your-
about that another
rent out
time
your-
too.
to all the
Yeah,
Europeans that are coming for FIFA.
so, but with that, I know our regulations somehow, because this came up when the town clerk tried to ban the short-term rentals on Lake Hiawatha, but apparently our zoning already. It might not be our zoning, I think it's our general bylaws exempts or doesn't allow any short-term lease or rental for property. So I know that is covered.
Define short term.
Like
I
less
don't
than
know.
30 days, I would.
Yeah, I
think.
don't know what it is, but I can figure it out. Do you remember when that came in front of Larry, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
it was the Lake Hiawatha. And it
recently.
Yeah, and it ended up getting withdrawn.
Yeah.
Passed over because there was in our general bylaws, there's something in there that doesn't allow short-term rental, but I'll get more information.
It's blocking bed and breakfast overnight stays.
Sure. And one of the critical items,
That's the way it played out with.
that like,
Because that was the.
No, there was something
There was
that was already in existence that prohibited whoever they were trying to stop from.
So it did get, the enforcement was there.
correct, my understanding of what occurred was on the Blackstone side of Lake Hiawatha, there was somebody that was renting out one of the houses as an Airbnb. And they were pretty much in violation because there is some type of organization for Lake Hiawatha, some management group. They weren't abiding by their local regulations or bylaws, and on top of that, they were trying to get the old Chowder Bowl property,
Oh, yeah.
and they
were
were wanted
back
to.
reopen.
yeah, they wanted to make that into like I don't even know, like,
It was a restaurant or bar.
I think they wanted to turn it into kind of like a bar type thing, and that spawned this whole Airbnb situation.
I was on the board then.
Yeah,
Well, it came up, but I didn't hear the end of the story because it got withdrawn. And then what happened after it got withdrawn.
Oh, yeah. There was
And
some
I didn't follow
mechanism,
Yeah.
there was some mechanism already in
Place.
place to block short-term rental.
Yeah,
And-
and we look at this, I think we're, bring all that stuff up right to the table.
great, yep, and the other situation too, I'm just writing that down, remember till.
Yeah.
The other situation too with the Chowder Bowl, I believe they went in front of ZBA for a variance, and it was.
I think they needed
denied.
like 2 or 3 variances.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
so,
There's a lot of controversial stuff going on at that time because Depot Street was happening.
always.
And yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on.
The other item too, so the lack of transition zoning, that's, as you can see, we have industrial zones right next to residential zones, which usually you have like some type of business or like light commercial or light industrial zone with a cap on the square footage of the building, whether it be 3,000 square feet or something, and much less intense uses. So that's a big one that's gonna be a big one to tackle, and I think that should just be something that this committee focuses on. Like laser focused for one of our like chunks when we start looking for something for that town meeting. The special permit approval criteria that we have in town, I actually included it in your packets. And just so you can kind of see so this is our criteria.
Yeah.
And I just pulled a good example. This is Medways. Which is, it's section C, which goes on, but I figured you, just for comparison to see what other communities have.
Yeah.
It,
Sometimes less is more. They give more latitude and discretion.
well, yes and no, I mean,
It seems kind of vague, potential fiscal impact. I
it,
don't know.
it is pretty vague, and I think like where Medway really draws it out, this is just like, for example, for number 5, proposed use will not be detrimental to the adjoining properties due to lighting, flooding, odors, dust, noise, vibration, refuse materials, or other undesirable visual, sight, or operational attributes of the proposed use. Like that's,
I like that.
yeah, that's pretty good.
I like that too.
Yeah.
Where we go neighborhood characteristics.
Okay, so social options.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, look at how you,
So that's,
Yeah.
and I can pull many more examples of that. And this is one this is a simple one too, that can be done quickly, because it's really just, it's a small section that needs to be updated in the zoning bylaws, and we can look at other towns. This is Medway's, I just know Medway's a tough town to permit in, so I grabbed Medway's examples. There's other examples too that we can look at. We also don't have drive-through regulations, which is actually, that's pretty bad for Bellingham. I mean, every town I've worked in has some type of regulation. Good news, we got draft ones. This one I drafted back in 2021, 2022. And it actually went in front of the planning board. We were going to put this on the town meeting warrant. However, when this was drafted, the Meehan properties came up to get rezoned, they wanted to put a gas station with a drive-through in, which was, not looked upon very nicely from the town. So we pulled this because we didn't want people to think that the town had anything to do with that development. So you did, that was not, it was not, any, that had nothing to do with the town, that was not a citizen, but I guess it would be considered a citizen's petition. So that's why this was a hold. And then we didn't have a planner for all of this.
So we don't have a lot of runway between now and spring, right? Because it's February, then we gotta, this, I think, would be something we could definitely do, and it's easy to sell and get it done.
Yeah.
Right?
If you wanted to like cleave off three things as we get, as we get our feet underneath us, I would say the three things that I think would be completely, we could definitely do by February. These are already drafted. You want to review and make comment? We can look at the special permit criteria and then the accessory dwelling. So it's just basically revise the family apartment section of our bylaws. I say those three would definitely be achievable.
You think, we don't know who's town council gonna be. Or do they make a decision yet?
That will be discussed at the December 2nd meeting. Select board meeting, so not a week from Monday, or a week yesterday, next Monday.
Depending on who it is, it might be really good to have the input on things, and some are better than others in terms of providing time for these things, but
I agree.
you think the special permit is
That might take longer.
you think
And
that
we can hold off on it.
no, but you think it's something we can.
Yeah, have you read this?
Well, I know, but.
No, but when you expand it, I think what Brian, you're saying is that we wanna spend time with it and really make sure we get it.
Yeah, we have like
Get it right.
competent, or we have town council that's gonna, work with us and, let's say, people do that.
Correct.
That might be that's one I see as being a win.
I don't know.
I think it might be,
I
but,
I agree. I think you're right. Like it is such an important part of our zoning bylaws that it does time, effort to make sure it's right. I don't think it is going to be a very significant hurdle to do it. I really don't, because it's just not essential. The other thing too with the special permits, so for the Hartford Ave adaptive use overlay, that district requires a special permit through the planning board, but it does not have this as the approval criteria. It actually has a specific approval criteria for that overlay, which is specific to making sure that number one, the traffic counts are based on appointment-based uses essentially, because the intent of the uses that we had, we didn't want a lot of vehicles entering those sites and coming out because Hartford Ave is pretty busy. So if there's traffic or transient traffic, we wanted to keep moving. That was the first part of it. The second part was making sure specifically that the rear neighbors are protected with some type of vegetative and opaque screening. Because the lots are not big. So there's more to it than just those are like the two like very, very, very critical parts of that special permit. Which the reason why I bring that up is because if we do start looking at areas like Pulaski Boulevard, Town Center, anywhere, I personally prefer a specific special permit criteria for that because you're trying to achieve something specific for those areas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are the other two means of it, special permit?
Special permit, drive-through
Okay.
regulations, and then the accessory dwelling units.
Because we're really looking at December, January for us. We're getting to it.
Well, I think the warrant, so if the meeting is it's May, right?
Oh, we don't have to have something February?
No, so I think the warrant opens, I think, at the end of February and probably closes. It would make sense if it closes in March, because you usually have like 2 months of prep between. So you can have like your public hearings and such.
Okay.
So we have time. And the other thing too, as long as we have placeholders, I tell Hillary, look, we have these 3 articles that are gonna be on. Make sure that you have these placeholders, because then we're gonna have warrants.
And you wouldn't have the actual verbiage.
Right. I mean, you gotta have it like, point, so when it closes, you make sure that it's been reviewed by town council. But I don't think that that's gonna be a heavy lift for these. Um. So. Anyway, that's that. Is there anything else? Oh, yeah, the other thing too for that, the design review committee, that's a dangerous committee to bring up, but. The only reason why I bring it up is because I had to deal with design review committees in other towns. Medway, for example, they have a design review committee, and when you submit any application, regardless of where it is in town, what the use is, what district it's in, goes to the design review committee, and it becomes a little bit problematic because if you have.
Isn't there a significant overlap between that and concept and planning board?
In Medway,
In general,
in general, yes, I would say yes. The issue is when you have bigger developments that you aren't really looking specifically at, like the finite details of the building, or the finite details of signage, because you're more concerned with circulation, safety aspects, and traffic. It's a lot of times, it's a lot to put on the planning board. And I believe that when it comes to the design review committee, the planning board or ZBA, if it's like another type of application, can handle it. The only time I would say the design review committee would come into play would be if you're looking at something like a town center district or like Pulaski Boulevard or something where it's something specific, where it's another application and you're looking specifically at the aesthetics of the building, the landscape, the hardscapes, all of that. Like you want renderings, you want to see it as it's going to be built. What I was going to say was the issue like with Medway, for example, and a few other towns that have these. I know we would work on industrial projects where the building was, in my opinion, beautiful for an industrial building, and you still go in front of the design review committee and they still are nitpicking stuff, and it's like, is it really necessary? We're on a street in an industrial zone that there's no traffic besides industrial traffic. No families are driving through here. There's no access from visitors from the town. So I put that in here, not really as a suggestion, but I know it has been brought up in the past about design review committees. I'm not really for them because it's just, first of all, I think it would require select board to form this thing, and usually it's architects and landscape people who get involved with these. I don't know if the town has people who'd be interested in it, so.
Let me just throw something out though.
Yeah.
One of the areas that we talked about is it's in our town.
Mhm.
And if we want to create something around community, I don't know the ramifications, but it would nice to have some criteria, so. As things evolve over time, it doesn't look like Pulaski, and I'm not suggesting it's going to, but to have some kind of requirement that there needs to look at standards.
Correct.
To ensure that, pedestrian walkways look similar and fit whatever vision. we
Or
have.
the building owner couldn't choose terrible paint colors for their retail. Have you guys seen it? It's like the yellow and the blue.
The plaza.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. But to that point, like we had a couple projects, 206 Mechanic Street was one of them, where in the decision, there was a requirement that some committee be formed to look at the Welcome to Bellingham sign, which was a pain. I know you're shaking your head because it was a pain. Now,
There was a lot of lessons learned through that process.
I agree.
And I think that would certainly be something worth discussing here.
Yeah,
I think I agree with you that if we were going to be doing it overlay district or something like this, then I think that there should be some standards put in there from design that would be over and above typical.
You gotta see the Shrewsbury zoning, because you're gonna be, I'm telling you, you're gonna be blown away.
5 years, 10 years?
No, I think they just passed it in 2022.
Really? Okay.
When I worked at the firm that I worked at before, we had the first application for that district, and that was submitted end of 22, I think.
Let's see it.
Yeah, I pulled the plans.
You showed it to me briefly, and it was really impressive.
Yeah, it's a very.
But I don't know the concept there, but it was.
Yeah,
Agree that it was establishing some guidelines.
Roxbury is different than Bellingham, so like we have to make sure that it's into our needs, but that is such a great starting point, in my opinion. So, but all I was gonna say was for the design review committee, similar to that approval, I would never, ever, ever condition approval the same way 206 Mechanic Street was ever again. However, in our zoning bylaws for an overlay district, we could require some type of clause that for each application that's submitted, a review committee, whether it be listed as town planner, DPW person, and like public safety, and then maybe like 2 citizens at large, are review the aesthetic appeal of the building for feedback and approval potential, something like that. So you don't create a committee. It's only when an application gets submitted and approved that that process occurs. Maybe. And it's just for the overlay. You know, we can get creative with stuff like that. But the design review committee, I just threw it in here, so.
Stop throwing things in.
I know, I'm sorry. And that's it, that's all I've got, so.
If, the accessory use,
Yes.
for what formerly was known as family apartments. If that's gonna be superseded by state regulation, what is there left for us to do?
Tighten as much as we can.
And it's not even lightening it, so the reason why, rather than just striking that section.
Yeah.
I would prefer to keep it pretty much the exact same way it is, except it won't be a family apartment, it'll be accessory dwelling unit, and it won't require a special permit. But it will at least give people guidance that, because the biggest issue is the septic capacity. A lot of times, like I've had applications come in, or people coming in that want to submit an application, and they say, I want to do a family apartment, and I will ask, did you do a Title V study, and or get a Title V report, and they say yes or no. Yes, I'll look at it, and you know, they want to do a 4-bedroom where they only have capacity for 3.
Right.
Well, that's an issue, and that's where it gives the town teeth, and it's more of making sure that if I am gone and there's a new town planner that isn't very aware of septic stuff, they can at least look at the regulations and say, all right, there are some approval criteria here. Because technically you can't deny, there wouldn't be an application in front of you, but it would have to go, sorry, I just hit your briefcase. They would have to get a building permit through the building inspector.
Yeah.
And I envision, is typically what happens is with things that don't require planning board approval, but require building permit approval, usually Tim will have a preliminary review from myself from a zoning perspective.
Yeah.
On some.
Sure.
With that, this will allow anybody who is in that room to look at this and say, okay, do you have the off-street parking requirements? Do you that sort of stuff?
Do you think we'll have a continued requirement to know who is in that unit?
No.
No.
Nope.
Would we need to inform existing family units that they no longer have to come before the zoning board to re-up their application?
We don't have to, but there's already people who have mentioned it to it, and we've said basically February 2nd. You're good. 'Cause
So they give them 5 years? Was it?
yeah. And the other thing too, this hasn't been solidified yet from the state. This is the other thing too that I forgot to mention, which complicates this even more. You are allowed to have an accessory dwelling unit by right. However, there is also in the regulations a clause that says that you can have multiple accessory dwelling units through the special permit process. Now, what I'm trying to understand, and town council wasn't able to give me an answer because the state hasn't actually given an answer to this. Are we required to allow additional accessory dwelling units through the special permit? Or is it up to us to decide if we want to do that? Because in my opinion, if it's our decision, I would say one accessory dwelling unit by right, that is it. There is no special permit for more accessory dwelling units. If that is the case, then we definitely want to spell that out in the zone bylaws.
Okay, so I don't know what the state statute says, but I'm sure it's. I think we can find things around it to make sure we think through and think about potential problems and try to be ahead of that curve because, you know, like, could you have a 900 square foot building anywhere in your lot that fits the,
Yeah,
well, let's say that's the case, then maybe we say that, well, then you can do that, but you gotta make sure your driveway connects. There's nothing else that
yeah,
boxes them
And
in.
the other thing is if your home is only 1,200 square feet, your primary residence, you can only do a 600 square foot accessory dwelling unit.
yeah, it's,
You're on a quarter acre of property. right?
No, but I think it's whatever the lower number is. So it's
Correct.
900 square feet or the lower.
there's also another thing that they threw in there too, that's really obnoxious about merging and unmerging lots. So well, you're an attorney, so you probably know this better than me, but if you own a lot that's existing in non-conforming, so for example, if you own a lot that's in the agricultural zone and it's half an acre, so it's existing non-conforming, then you purchase the lot next to you that is also half an acre, existing non-conforming. My understanding is state statutes, if they're in common ownership, I think it's for 5 years, they become one merged lot because they're existing non-conforming. And there's a lot of lots that are like this, especially in like Weathersfield, for example. You can now unmerge them. So
We make them individually non-conforming. Provided they don't lose their non-conformity in each lot, I would imagine.
correct. And you would have to make sure that there's access, like an A&R lot, you need to have access, but it's really, the state's just throwing all this stuff to really allow,
Reading about it right now, they're trying to answer the housing
Yeah,
shortage
yeah.
rather than the population problem, which is what one is.
Yeah,
Is this goes into February?
yeah, I think it's February 2nd.
Anything that's February seems pre-existing.
Yeah.
And then after that, if we don't have a bylaw in place, it's just kind of whatever's in.
That's whatever's in the law, but I mean, they will be required to submit building permit plans in order to build. So if we get rolling on this and we have something in place before February for this, at least draft language, I can at least have draft guidance for the building department to review these things, which Tim and I are on the same page. He'll be here, like I said, at the next meeting to discuss. He can go into more details. He knows about this a lot more than I do. I know the zoning aspect when it comes to the merging and unmerging, square footage requirements, all that. He's very in tune with it. But with that, I think we're gonna be okay. We just have to get ahead of it sooner rather than later.
Sure.
So This has been a very good
So
discussion.
the max is 900 square feet.
Or half,
half the principal, whichever of the two is smaller.
correct.
So for some people, it won't make sense. I mean, I guess you could do a micro unit, but
Yeah,
well, yeah,
and I mean, that's good, because if you have something like Weathersfield, for example, which is very high density, you know, it's really going to affect an owner's ability to shoehorn this like really weird like unit in there.
Yeah, you go like a 6x10, that's the size of a shed.
Yeah,
Like you could build a,
yeah.
with a, with bathroom and, it's crazy. So. And so I just generally, I think this is, I'm happy that this committee is,
We're stopping the share screen, but
this committee up and running, and I think that, Bellingham has matured past its zoning a long time ago.
yeah,
I think the people's opinions on zoning has changed and matured over time, and now that we're at this sort of saturation point, that I think there is a desire for livability, yes, and maintaining open space and quality of life, and then, you know, to the extent it's this, we can steer it in that direction.
and I think there's an emphasis on redevelopment over new development. So revitalizing areas like the town center, Pulaski Boulevard, different areas that may be a little bit outdated, and there's other uses that would be a better fit.
Along with that too is, I remember, I learned this term through Jim, what did he say? Realigning zoning to match the existing, what the town is now,
Yeah,
right? And
Yep.
like, he said Depot Street is an industrial corridor, right?
yeah,
Parts of it isn't zoned correctly.
Mhm.
The significant pushback, like realigning things and
yeah,
transition zoning that you suggest, I think it's
yeah, no,
a long
absolutely.
time coming, so.
Absolutely. And there's ways too that, like I said, like for the Maple Street situation, that can be avoided by just putting a cap on the square footage of the buildings. Cause I think like Camp Bow Wow and that other building that has the gymnastic place, like that is something, those uses I think are exactly what you would want in a transition zone, you know, from industrial to residential. And there's a lot of areas that something like that can be applied to. So, we got our work cut out for us. But like I said, this has been a really good conversation. The first go of things. I'm excited to work with you all on this stuff.
Thanks for taking a crack at sort of what you thought were the high level items to also set
No.
one. Just some my questions about what everyone thought we should be looking at. You've addressed most of them.
Okay, and I don't know if anybody has any other ideas, but I mean, we can regroup too at another meeting. I know it's really getting close to 8 o'clock. I want to keep this moving.
Educational question for me, do any of the overlays that we have lessen the requirements, or do they all expand the requirements for those areas?
They-
Tighten them.
They expand them, except the zone, the aquifer protection overlay. That one, it restricts a lot of uses for that one. But the other ones give more options.
Making that section more developable.
Correct. Like the adaptive use overlay, the one on Hartford Ave, that one's specifically to give the developer more business options because it's all zoned residential. But that area is not really in line with residential uses. I mean, nobody really wants to live right on Hartford Ave. It's busy. So you could rezone to a business zone. However, the issue that we have is that our B1 and B2 zones, they allow a lot of uses. I mean, a lot of uses. And the biggest concern was the food establishments because they have a drive-through, you know, McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts. We see a lot of traffic going in and out of those areas. Something that's new, Dunkin' Donuts started rolling out these small footprint, you know, stuff like drive-through only, and they started adding a pickup window because the intention is for like the Grubhub and DoorDash. Well, yeah, it's
Weird limit by not allowing
yeah,
drive-through in that overlay district, yeah.
in any place. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
they're literally 600 square foot. Like,
People never get out of the car.
yeah, they go in. There's like 3 workers.
It's just like in the center of a parking lot. There's some areas in Lincoln, Rhode Island that have, that they allow that, and it's in the middle of a parking lot, and you see people go through. There's no effect on the
Webster Mass has
areas that are like.
Yeah, Webster Mass has one too on their main drag. It's when I saw the comments come out, I was like, oh, no.
Yeah, I read about it, so let's get this, finish on fast. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So,
How is that different than a regular drive-through? Like the
It's all it is.
like the Dunkin' Donuts, like, not the refill. I mean, if you didn't have the counter availability to walk in.
Yeah.
It's pretty much the same thing, right?
Well, I think some of the people actually park, they see the line and say, I'm not gonna wait in the row or whatever,
And they go in.
and they go in.
and the concern is that like with a freestanding Dunkin' Donuts, you have most of your sales are gonna be through the drive-through. So there's really not a huge difference between traffic generation between a 600 square foot little kiosk and a full Dunkin' Donuts.
Right.
The concern is that you can now shoehorn these things like anywhere. I mean, they are important.
5 of them.
It's
Yeah.
that's really well.
That's a great idea.
I think I have constant plans for that, you know, the prototype for that Dunkin'. I'll bring it at a meeting just so you can see it, it is interesting, but yeah.
They did that with film development in the 90s. They put out.
Oh, yeah, the
Yeah.
1 hour.
Right.
Yeah.
Dunkin' Donuts, you have a line of people, it's, what's the lady culture? Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Get out of the car. That's why I love the whole concept of doing something in the center of town. Making it more walkable, you know, eventually over time seeing evolve into. I lived here for years and years, and someone had asked me, yeah, 8 or 9 years, and the 2 things that surprised the hell out of me. First was, where is the center of Bellingham? You know, I lived here for like 8 years, and I was like, I don't know, I can tell you what the town hall is, because there was no like feeling. Like
Yeah.
center. And the other one was, where does Bellingham begin? And on the southern side, and I used to say, well, I'm not really sure, but I think it's at the corner which now has that CVS.
yeah,
Because I thought the whole rest of that was either Blackstone or one side.
Right.
There was no like feeling of community.
Mm.
Well,
Meetings from the accessory, was there an occupancy limit? I'm not finding it.
you mean like for how many people can be in the dwelling?
Yeah.
No. But
there's gotta be.
Don't require
Yeah,
within half a mile of the station.
Correct.
So you could have 4 or 5 people in that 900, all with their own cars.
There's what do they call them? The sanitary code.
Yeah, so
But that's based on bedrooms, not heads, right?
yeah, like,
Cause I know when I put the addition on my house years ago, and maybe it's changed, it was how many bedrooms, okay, you're gonna have X number of bedrooms, so I had to do it to 5 to make sure. And then it was the health department that had to sign off on it, so I'm assuming it's the same thing. On the flip side, I guess I could have 20 people in the house.
yeah, and I
It's
think
Still.
where that really comes into play, Steve, is if somebody wants to try and register their kids to be in the schools. That's where a lot of times this occupancy issue becomes an issue.
Mhm.
And there are requirements through Board of Health and the building department where, you know, like if you have bedrooms.
But that might be, see, that's a clever idea about ways around this,
Yeah,
is that you limit the number of people that can occupy those things, those kinds of buildings,
yeah,
through some other form of regulation.
Well, they do it in farming areas, you know, chickens have a required minimum or maximum height.
Boston or a lot of towns, particularly Boston, where they have 19 college kids cramming into one apartment to save money, they have regulations say, no, you can't do
yeah,
this.
So I think,
No,
Ryan,
that's good.
one you're thinking, which is excellent, is I wonder if you can tie an increased septic requirement considering as a restriction.
maybe, yeah. Cause I can tell you right now, like a lot, anytime you bring up the septic situation with, an application. 9 times out of 10, the person says, there's no way I even wanna tackle the septic issue because they're so expensive to replace and retrofit right now.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Next meeting.
yeah, what are you folks thinking? Do you want Tuesday nights work for everybody? I assume? And I like this setup down here. I think this works best. That works for everybody else.
Sure.
Rather than the Arcan meeting.
I agree.
Yeah,
Are we going to meet in December or are we gonna skip?
oh, should we? It's up to you guys, whatever you wanna do. I will be here, hopefully. Um. So we're at the 26th now. I know I was trying to get us to meet towards the beginning. If you would like, obviously I don't wanna push a date too close to the holidays. I'm sure everybody's busy. We could do like the second or third week of January, and what I can do for that meeting is actually have submittals for those 3 items to actually start discussing and reviewing. And then that way we can maybe brainstorm off that, or we can meet in December. It's completely.
I'm okay with December.
Okay.
Do you, in December, Rob, do you want me to do presentation for the group
Or,
on current, like, commercial real estate trends and things that are happening in the region?
would that be helpful for everybody?
Be helpful for me.
Yeah,
But I wouldn't be here, just
Liz is
Did you
quite,
say commercial trend?
Commercial real estate, yes.
Liz is an expert in commercial real estate.
Something's complicated, right?
Either, I'll see if I can expense it.
I'm a investment in this really company.
No,
I
but
get a
you
sense
cheated
like
with
this
all that.
across the desk all the time.
Yeah, cost of construction, I'm a little concerned about with potential tariffs in Canada.
All right, everybody's presenting their expertise at the next meeting, okay?
Do it in December if that's not enough time for you to put anything
No,
together.
I can, this stuff, I can definitely put together a comprehensive.
I can do it either way. I can take the first 15 minutes.
Would December 17th work for everybody?
That was one of the ideas, that's fine.
I can do that. I don't know. I think it's in my calendar.
Okay.
Is that conservation and planning?
No, that's conservation and planning are the week before, that's December 11th and 12th.
Excellent.
Yeah, don't do December 10th, I don't want to have three. Yeah.
17 works. for me.
Yeah, just going in the future, if we establish a regular day, the first Tuesday of the month generally doesn't work.
All right, you heard that, so first Tuesday of the month. is what we're gonna
And then everybody-
Are we gonna go once a month or kick it up to two?
once a month, like, we can do the December 17th and then see what I prepared, and then maybe we meet twice, maybe in January, just so we can get something like pretty solidified for February or meeting more opens. We don't need to have anything when it opens. Maybe we can decide that, because we're not gonna meet twice in December anyway.
Not sure what else thinks, but I like 6:30.
Yeah,
Yes,
As opposed to later.
yeah,
It's fine, sure.
yeah, earlier is a little harder for me. I
sure,
usually have to leave work early, 6:30.
okay.
In this room.
Either,
Cater,
yes, we will.
catering it with my knowledge.
As far as this board and transparency, I think one of the things that I'm picking up from what's going on in town is that full transparency has to be there with this, and I like the videotaping meetings.
Yep.
What types of, there's meeting minutes that get generated out of here from you? So we did that. Is there anything else we need to think about with
I
this?
mean, I think we should ask the town social page on Facebook to post. Like, hey, there's a meeting coming up.
Oh, you're talking about the towns.
Yeah, can they do that?
They can.
Yeah,
If we do that, I'm not, well, I want more transparency, then maybe this room would not be used to. But I think full transparency is whatever we gotta do to be as transparent as possible.
What I would recommend is, continue doing this, obviously it's posted, it's an open meeting, public discussion, anybody can come in. Once we have items that are ready to be submitted, like we have a draft article, I would highly recommend that we do some type of public outreach, because if for some reason there is some contention, which I don't think that any of the things we've discussed tonight for those 3 items would be contentious, but there's times that I've been completely mistaken on that. With that, it does take wind out of people's sails when they come to town meeting and say that this is being forced, when you have had public outreach meetings, because it's public conception when it comes to these things.
but
So-
I would say our Hartford Ave Overlay District Committee meeting, we met here and there was,
A zillion times.
yeah, we had tons of, not tons, but there was, a butter participation and,
In this room.
yeah, and the people did, yeah, the people did come,
Yeah, there's people who
So
mind.
we did the master plan committee meetings in here and people came to those. I think it's more about informing them when they are, like, can we put it in the code red system so it
Yeah, and
gets to people's phones if they sign up for those things.
yeah, and I do think, public outreach, like where you have an actual public outreach meeting.
Yeah, I think the lessons learned from your Hartford Avenue and MBTA.
Yeah,
Learned from it is your public outreach was excellent, and that was part of the big success of those 2 programs.
yeah,
Highly involved.
I think we actually had some advocates come out of those public meetings, speak at town meeting
yeah.
about like, we should do this because we're gonna lose our funding for senior centers and things like that.
I
And
think
just
that, yeah, I would have some lessons.
I would love to have us back. Wow.
Yeah, that's
Good.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, it's tough when people say transparency and they're like, they wanna see stuff being posted where they can see it on Facebook. We always run into potential open meeting law issues when we're posting about things on Facebook, so I usually just refrain from doing it because I wouldn't want to open us up to any litigation or myself to any litigation. But I think official channels, what's the saying? You can lead a horse to water, can't make them drink, so there's only so much we can do to inform people that we're having these meetings and.
Well, that's, I mean, I agree with you. 100%. I mean,
Like,
I
we'll
see-
do
I-
the, we'll do the most,
I
but
have a different opinion. Some people that visit the building often with service, I feel that in my, like, in the planning board, I shouldn't be out there posting on things because it's predisposing decisions out there.
No,
I agree 100%.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sharing it. That's all I do, like, that's what I'm saying, here's this agenda. Then no problem, because to your point, you don't wanna be, when
We're just speaking at upcoming meetings, if you wanna come and learn.
one of these, if we're gonna handle, probably we're gonna handle these one at a time or all three at once, you know, and that's all the outreaches.
Yeah, yeah, yep, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you on that.
Yeah, I know, it's hard, we are transparent, but there's also, again, there's limitations to what we should be doing publicly and, it's unfortunate, but though, because people, they wanna see it on Twitter, they wanna see it
Yeah.
wherever, and we just can't always be doing that individually, we have to make sure we're following open meeting
Well, we
laws.
have to stay productive. And
Yeah, that's true too, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, word will spread as well. I have a feeling. Bylaw review committee being formed. So
Did you hear from Don at all tonight?
I didn't receive any emails or anything. I'll give him a call tomorrow to see what's going on. Might have had, I know he was traveling a lot for work, so he might have had to run out. I'm sure notice, but I'll touch base with him.
Will there be a separate binder for next meeting?
No.
They want to install it?
Right.
Well, the chair needs a different color.
Oh.
Maybe you can get colored inserts. So
Yeah, maybe.
Week to week kind of
Yeah,
thing.
week to week.
Cheese
Good Robert's names it is.
We'll be sure to have a charcuterie board ready.
Good job.
People go.
That's why you have the chairman.
She's on.
Oh, school committee, genetic.
All right, so are we just to adjourn? All right.
Second. He said,
Phil made the motion, from Jeff, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, John.
Join your.